Hello, computer animation students. Hopefully you're all doing well at home. This is a video for you to kind of guide you through how to do some of the assignments that we have been doing in class that you didn't have the opportunity to see the demo for. So the intent of this is to show you how to do the assignments that you will see in your Google Classroom. So today we're going to be looking at how to do the wine glass animation. So what I'm going to do firstly is I'm going to just share my screen here and show you the actual assignment that you would see in Google Classroom. Excuse me. So in Google Classroom, you should be able to see in here the wine glass animation assignment. So once again, that is this assignment here. It's worth 10 marks. Later on, I'll do a video for the locker lock animation as well as the text alley assignment. So let's take a look at how to do this. So I'm just going to share my screen again. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to share my screen for Blender, and I'll walk you through just like I would in class on how to do this. So looking at this, the very first thing for the wine glass we need to do is obviously make a glass. So the first thing we want to do is we want to, on the num keys, we're going to press the number 5 so that we can go and change from orthographic view to ortho view. So we need to be in ortho view. We need to also be in front view, and I'm going to delete out my cube. Now, essentially what we want to do here is we want to shift and then hold down the scroll wheel and scroll my screen down a little bit, and I want to position myself up around here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, in object mode, I'm going to add another object, but this time it's going to be a curve, not a mesh. So I'm going to add a curve, and it's going to be a Bezier curve. And so in here, what I'm going to do now is I need to now go into edit mode, and I need to click on a point here. And if I didn't get the right point, I will know, but if I get the right point, when I G, I will pull down and I will be able to pull down this curve. Now, once again, if I didn't get the right point, if let's say I had this point here and I go to pull, it starts to curve the line there like this. That's not the right point. So it's the middle point here. I'm going to G and pull down. I'm going to pull about halfway down, and then I'm going to pull down again down to here. So I'm going to pull down again, I need to firstly press E to extrude, and then I'm going to drag down and click here, and then I'm going to E to extrude, and I'm going to extrude back up here, and then E to extrude and pull, so it's almost basically connecting right here. Now, at this point, it doesn't look like much of anything, but what we're wanting to do is we're trying to make it kind of like a crosshair of a glass. So right now we're making the sort of the cup, the part that the liquid would go into, and so it needs to be kind of curved. So what I need to do is I need to right-click in this middle point here, and I need to press R to rotate, and I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to right click on the middle point, and I'm going to R to rotate, smooth this around, and G to pull this right nice and tight to the intersection of the Z and the X axis here. Likewise, right click here and R to rotate and just smooth this out. And I'm going to pull this back a little bit now. So G to grab to pull it back. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to click in this middle point and G and grab and pull it back. And now we have a bit of a curve looking like kind of we would have with a cup. So at this point here, if I go into object mode, what I will see is something that looks like this. It's not perfectly connected there, but that will be okay. So what I have right now is a curve, and a curve does not have vertices, but I want to make vertices so I can work with this a little easier. So what I need to do now in object mode, when I have my curve created the way I see here, is I'm going to hold down the Alt key, press the letter C, and I'm going to choose the mesh from curve option to turn this curve into a mesh. Now if I go into edit mode, what I'll see is I have a series of vertices now that have been created for this curve. And I'm just going to scroll out, zoom out, and I'm going to shift scroll wheel my screen up a little bit. And now I'm going to make the rest of what I would have for my glass. So this was the top sort of cup part of this. I am going to now extrude down, and I'm going to make the stem of the wine glass, and I'm going to make the base of the wine glass. So that's basically looking like that. But now I need to add some thickness to this glass. So however much I go back on itself now, however wide I make this, is how thick this glass is going to be. So the thinner or the less space between these two lines, the more, or the thinner it will be, the more wide, the thicker it will be. Now at this point, it still is obviously not looking like a glass per se, but what I want to do is I now want to tell the computer to spin this around 360 degrees and replicate what it sees there. And the way I do this is in edit mode, I am going to to select all. So the object needs to be selected. Then I need to click my cursor, my 3D cursor, so it's on the Z axis. It's on the Z axis because I want it to spin around that Z axis. And then the last thing I need to do is I need to go from front view to top view. So when I get into top view now, what I can do is I can scroll over here, find the spin option, and what I want to do is I want to spin this by 18 steps and 360 degrees. And so when I come back, it still doesn't maybe look like a wine glass until I go into front view and look there. Now I have something that looks like a wine glass. Now, a couple things we can do to kind of clean this up a little bit is I can to select all in edit mode still, and then W and remove doubles. This will get rid of some extra vertices that I have in my thing. And now I can go back into object mode, and I could then smooth this out to make it look a little bit nicer. Now, clearly what I have here right now is a very large looking glass. So I want to scale this down a little bit. I want to, I'm going to go S and I'm going to go 0.1 to make this much, much smaller. Now what I'll do is I'll just simply move this down. I will move this down here. And one of the things I'm going to need to do as well is I need to make my my pivot or my rotational point different, because right now I started up here with creating this object, and I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see a little better. But I created this starting this point, and so this is the rotation point. So right now if I were to rotate this, it would rotate at the top corner of my glass, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So how I change my rotation point is I need to go back into edit mode. And while my glass is selected, I can G and grab, and I can move my object up. But notice that my rotation point stays where it was. So I'm going to now position my object in relation to the rotation point so it's in the right spot. Then if I go back into object mode, and I can then move this back down, notice now that when I rotate this, it rotates based on that rotation point, and it will rotate correctly. Now, I would like to add a bit of a table to this appearance right now as well, so I can kind of like create the sense of a wine glass on a table. So I'm going to go in object mode, and I'm going to add a mesh cube. And so I'm going to scale this like 10 times bigger. And clearly that's way bigger than my glass right now, but I'm going to scale this down now in the Z axis so it's really thin this way, and I'll position it about like this, and I'll just bring it so here. So now we see we have a very large sort of tabletop, but the front view of it is fairly thin. And I'm just going to now grab my wine glass, and I'm going to put it right onto the tabletop. Now, if I were to set up my camera a little bit, because my camera's not set up perfectly yet, so I'm going to, in view find, I'm just going to Control Alt and then the number pad 0 to get my camera set up. And I'm just going to go, and from the side view, so I'm going to go press 3 to get side view. I'll just pull this out a little bit so I get a little bit better angle on my thing here. And then while my camera's selected, G and grab it and just pull it down a little bit so I can see this all a little better. Now I also will move my my light as well so that it's between my camera and my glass, so I'm seeing this a little better. And then I can press the F12 key and take a look at what this is looking like. So if I were to press the F12 key, I can sort of see what this is going to look like, and it's going to look fairly glassy. So at this point here, once again, if I press the F12 key, I can see, sorry, that it's not looking glassy, but I do have a glass. So what I need to do is I need to now create a glass texture to this. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to select my glass. And the way we add our glass texture is basically we need to, over here, choose materials, click on new, and I could call this glass for lack of a better name. But basically what I want to do to make glass is I can go down to transparency, click on this, and then the Fresnel is what controls whether something is transparent or not. So I'm going to change this to about a 4 or a 5. So I want this to be about a 4 for Fresnel. And I also, when we have glass, it oftentimes reflects. So I'm going to go to mirror and change the reflectivity to about 0.1. So now if I do an F12 on this, what I will see is I will see my glass looking a lot more like glass rather than just a clear gray thing. Now, at this point, what I want to do as well is I want to, I'll just move this over a little bit so we've got a little more space. I'm going to go into wireframe now. So this is wireframe. It allows me to sort of see through my object a bit. And I'm going to click here and I'm going to add in object mode a UV sphere. So I'm just going to basically add a UV sphere and I'm going to scale this to about 0.3 of its normal size. And I'm essentially just going to be placing what amounts to a marble sort of in my glass. Now to make this look a little bit more like a marble, or at least different than my glass, I'm going to, while I have my marble selected in object mode, I'm going to click new. I'm going to click diffuse, and I'm just going to change my grayscale down to black so that this is now black. So now if I did a F12 on this, what I see is I see a marble inside my glass on a tabletop. So at this point here, now what I'd like to do is I'd like to animate. So I'm going to just slide this over a bit so we can see this a little better, shift my screen over. And what I would like to do is I essentially like it to kind of rock this way and then rock and fall over onto the table. And at the same time, the marble is shifting around with it. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So down here, below this viewfinder here is what we call a timeline. And right now we are on frame 1. Frame 1 of what we say is 24 frames for every second. So essentially about every 25 frames, give or take 1 frame, is about a second of time. And so what we want to do right now is I want to select my glass and I want to, and we can be in wireframe or we can be in solid in this. I'll go to solid just so it's easier for you to see at this point. We'll worry about our marble later. But if I go into solid view here and I in frame 1 want to sort of tell the computer I want at frame 1 for the glass to be here, I simply press the I key while my cursor, while my mouse is in the 3D viewfinder area, and then I click lock rot scale. Now, that doesn't seem to have done a whole lot of anything, but now if I go and I change this number 1 keyframe to 25 keyframes, so about a second, and now I'm going to R30 so that this rocks over 30 degrees, and I'm going to move it up a bit because it's kind of going through my tabletop right now, and then I'm going to press I, and then lock rot scale again to lock that into place. Now I'm going to go up to frame 50, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to R, and now minus 30 to bring it back, and then I'm going to drag down, and I'm going to I lock rot scale that. So you might be saying, well, what are you doing so far? Well, we haven't done anything. Well, it looks like we actually have. So if I start at frame 1, it's now going to record me moving this way and then back that way. So at frame 50, obviously, I'm back to where I was before. Now, if I go up another 25 frames, which is basically a second, I'm going to go R minus 30, and now I'm going to rock it this way, and I bring it up a little bit so it's outside the tabletop. I lock rot scale, and then lastly, I'm going to go to frame 100, and I'm going to drop it right down onto the tabletop. Now, thinking about this, normally it would be 90 degrees, so another 60 degrees to get to the tabletop, but it's not going to be exactly that because we have a big glass at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and play with this a bit. So at frame 100, I'm going to go R minus, and I'll try 50 and see if that looks good. And actually, excuse me, it looks pretty good. So if I click there and then just pull it up a little bit so it's not on the tabletop itself, I'll pull it about here. I might want to go another maybe 1 or 2 degrees, so I'll go R minus 2, so it's laying flat on the ground. So it looks like for this one that I created, about R minus 52 total would have brought it so it's sitting flat on the thing. Now at this point I could tell it to lock it into position, so I lock rot scale, and now it's in that spot. So what I've done now is if I go back to frame 1 and play this, what I have is I have it rocking one way, rocking the other, and then rocking all the way and falling on the ground. So that looks good. This looks good, but notice I have a marble in here that has not yet moved. So what I need to do now is I need to go back to frame 1. Need to go into wireframe, and now I need to focus on my marble. So I need to select the marble instead. So that's this here, and I'll just go into front view. And now what I need to do is in frame 1, I need to I lock rot scale my marble, being in that position.
Please have an interruption. Mr. Bates, can you please come to the office, please?
And then I'll go to frame 25, and notice now at frame 25, looking at where the glass is, we would have to kind of assume that the marble should probably, I'm going to G to grab and move this over, probably rock over to this area here somewhere, and then I lock rot scale. And then I'm going to go to frame 50, And then obviously I'm going to have to G and pull this back and position over here. And then I can I lock rot scale. And so the last few movements are frame 75. I'm going to have this move and it'll kind of start to come out, let's maybe even say, at frame 75, and I can I lock rot scale that. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller movement, so 85, and I'll have this now actually falling physically out of the glass, and I could I lock rot scale this. And then at frame 100, I could have this G and pulling and knocking, coming right down onto the tabletop. And then I could even extend this a little bit more and go frame, let's say 115, and have it bounce up a little bit. And then I could I lock rot scale that, and then I could have it go to maybe, let's say, frame 130 and have it come down again and sort of land on the tabletop and I lock rot scale. So now if I run this whole thing, what I see is I'm going to see it rock this way, rock that way, the marble comes out, falls, and then bounces and comes again. Now we could, question about whether that looks exactly natural or not, but it's looking reasonably good. So what we want to do now is notice that if I keep running this, it does nothing from all the way from to 250 and then it starts over again. So what I need to do is I need to change this, the end period, to 130 so it matches up with my actual animation. And so then I will be able to see how it's going to look for that animation. So at this point here, the last thing we need to do is we need to actually be able to see what this is going to look like. Because if I did an F12 on this again, this will show me what this is looking like in this particular situation. And a couple things I want to do. I firstly want to get rid of that shadow there, but then secondly, I want to animate this so I can see my glass, see my ball all the way it should look. So let's take a look at those two things. So I'm going to go back to frame 1 here for a second. And one of the things we can do to make this look better is I can take off the shadow. So notice over here there's a tool, and it looks like a camera, and it's called the render tool. And if I scroll down and I look here for shading, under shading there is an option that says shadows. If I deselect this and then I press F12, you will see that I no longer have a shadow that's being created by this. Now sometimes we want shadows, but sometimes we don't. And while I'm at it, I will, in object mode, just smooth out my marble as well so it looks a little bit nicer. Now, if I want to render this, and that means render it so that I can see each of these 130 frames all together in one movie, what I need to do is I need to go into this render tool again. So that's this camera tool. And there's then 3 steps that we must do. The very first one is very important. We need to change our output. We cannot have it going to the temp drive. We want to go to where we have created something. So if you're working from home, you're probably going to want to put it on your hard drive. But you're going to probably want to have created already a folder in your hard drive, and I'm just going to do that right now quickly on mine. I'm going to go to my Windows Explorer, I'm going to go to my computer, and I'm going to, in my hard drive, I'm going to make a folder called, and I'll just right click here, choose new folder, and I'll call this computer animation. So in here, if you're working from home, this is where you would want to probably save it because you're going to be working from your hard drive. So now if I close out here and I go back into Blender and I go back, click on maybe E and then go back to C, I should see my computer animation folder in here now. So I have a computer animation folder, and then in here I could call this, for lack of a better name, Wine Glass Animation. And so then I can accept this, and then I have to now set my output so I can see my output is correct. Now the other thing I must do is I must change my output from a PNG, which is an image file, to an AVI JPEG. So I changed that, so now it's going to be a motion video that we're looking at. Last thing I want to do is I want to check to see that my frames are ending correctly at 130. Then I can simply click animation, and then what the computer is going to do is it's going to animate 1 frame at a time, from frame 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And this will take a while because it has to do 130 frames. And as you can see, each frame is taking about 3 seconds. So realistically, it's going to take about 3 or 4 minutes to animate. So I'm just going to let you kind of watch for the rest of this video, if you'd like, to see how this is animating. And then I will show you at the end how you can actually view your finished video and then take that video and upload it into Google Classroom as well. And that's what I will need to see, because if you are just simply showing me your Blender file, that you've done. Unfortunately, your textures and other things that you add to your scene will not show properly when you just show me your Blender file. So I will be able to see what you've done, but I won't be able to see your completed thing until you've actually rendered a video like you can see here on animated AVI JPEG. So I'll just wait for this to finish, which it should take a few minutes to do. And then when we're done that, we can take a look where this is at. So while it's rendering, I will just go here to Windows Explorer, and I'm going to go into my C drive. And once again, if you created a computer animation folder in your C drive, what you will see is that file, Wine Glass Animation, in there. And it's going to have from 001 to 0130. So basically it's saying it's doing 130 frames. Now it's clearly not yet finished, but if we want to actually view this at the end of it, what we will see is that we will see that wine glass right from the very beginning when it started to rock and all the way fall over and the marble come out. We will see it with its proper glass texture, everything showing the way it wants to. And I will note right now, I didn't show it for the video for sake of time, but you might want to consider when you're doing your own wine glass video, that when you make the tabletop, that little cube that we did, you might want to add a material and then a texture of maybe a tablecloth, like some sort of, you know how you see those picnic tables, sort of striped red or striped yellow sort of picnic tables. If you added something like that, it would really enhance and show the clear difference between the glass material you have on the wine glass and then that tabletop texture. So that's something to consider, but it's not something essential that you have to do if you're going to be submitting this to me. One other thing I'll say while we're waiting here for this to finish is that if you're working from home, once again, I'm going to be trying, starting with this wine glass animation, and then also then the text alley and the locker lock, I will be trying with all the new assignments except for the major projects, which are sort of your own creation. I'm going to be doing a demo like I would with the students who are in the class. And that way, hopefully, this will help you kind of walk you through the steps. And what you might want to do, and I would suggest, is watch this video maybe once or twice, and then attempt to do it in Blender. And if you might find it helpful even to use your phone to be able to like watch the YouTube video and even hear my discussion and my explanation while then doing your actual Blender work on your desktop or laptop. And hopefully all of you have been able to load Blender 2.79. Clearly I'm not working with Blender 2.79 here, it's 2.69. But when you do load Blender on there, then simply all you need to do is once you finished your Blender file, you can upload that file as well as the finished render to me so that I can see exactly what it is you did and then give you a mark out of 10 for that. Okay, so this is almost finishing up. In my computer, we're at frame 112 right now, so we've got probably about another 20 seconds or so to wait, and then we should be able to view what this actually looks like. So hopefully that will be done really quickly. We're at frame 120 now, so once again, maybe 15 seconds or so, and we should be able to view this. So once again, just to clarify, I went to this Windows Explorer, or you could have my computer possibly, depending on the Windows operating system you're working with, and then you're going to want to go to the C drive, and you're going to want to go to that folder you created in the C drive called Computer Animation, and that's where you set the output for this render. So that's where you're going to see it. So mine is now done. So when I see this file here now, if I double click on this, and once again, you're not going to be able to view this video by just opening it in Blender. But what I can do now is if I'm going to stop share on this screen here, and I'm going to share this other screen with you here right now. So I'm just going to share screen my Windows Media Player as well. And so let's take a look at what this looks like. So this is what our video, our finished video looks like. Now clearly I didn't color the tabletop, but if I run that a couple times, you can see a glass, you can see the marble moving. It looks pretty natural, looks pretty good. This is the file that we want to upload. So how would I upload this? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now go and I'm just going to share my screen here with in Google Classroom. And if I were in Google Classroom, and I don't have the exact same options as you have because this is the teacher version, but basically here what you would do is you would go into your Wine Glass Animation, and up here on the right, you would see a turn in option. So on there you would click there, and then you would actually locate your file, that Wine Glass Animation that you finished, add that file, and then turn it into me, and then I can mark it for you. So hopefully that all makes sense. If you're having problems still though, please don't hesitate to email me or to send a comment through Google Classroom. Thanks for watching.